Doing the little circle. There we go.
Rebuild of the favorites. We here for the latest. South side or the north side. Not tuned to the greatest. Home team for the home teams. Both sides got our own rings. On the mound or the long ball. But we don't put the wrong strings. Yeah. It's that time of the year now. Wrigley or guarantees for the whole league that we here now. New show with a new mood. Discussions and interviews. Trade rumors that might be. This is Pinwheels and Knife. Yeah.
What's going on, everybody? Give us a second here. Aldo left us unsupervised. I need an adult, and we'll get going in just a second. Fidds, you do the tweeter things?
Peter's out.
Why can't I see it? I know we're late, Peter, but we don't have our producer, so I gotta. He's actually getting married. There we go. Here we go. All right, there we go. There's the retweet, and then all right. In 3, 2, 1. What's going on, everybody? It is Thursday, July 28th, and you have found the Pinwheels and Ivy podcast. I am your host, Matt Zawoski, a.k.a. Father Zoe, a.k.a. Southside Zoe, and with me, as always, the good Reverend K. Fidds.
Hey, yeah, I'm actually passing up on a cameo appearance in the A&E television special being filmed at one of my fiance's clients, where I'd have gotten to sit in the background at a table and been an extra while they film really delicious burnt end hot dogs. So, yeah, so I think I win.
Big movie star.
Yeah, you get a lot more FaceTime here, and if you want burnt hot dogs, dude, I can make that happen for you. And, of course, our man down there, which, folks, we got a good show for you, but you're going to want to stay put for the NASCAR Minute at the end of the show. There was a lot of shit going on. That's our guy, NASCAR Mitch.
So much drama.
A lot. It's like a soap opera down there for redneck. It's great.
We have a fan. I'm sorry, I can't even say it with a straight face. I'm working on it, Mitch. I'm working on it. We have a great show for you today. We have two really good guests, so it's going to be a little bit different. Aldo's getting married, so he chose his future wife over us. Cool. And we have a really great show. As you can see, we have a fourth member with us right now. That is Greg Huss. So we're going to go over all things Cubs, draft, farm system, trade deadline rumors, and then later on in the show, we do have another guest coming on that we're going to speak about the White Sox with. That is Mr. Daniel Victor. You guys are going to love him. He's a great insider as well for the White Sox. I've known Dan for a little bit now, following him on Twitter. But unlike we usually do, we're going to do Cubs first this time. Of course, when Aldo's gone, we're going to actually do the Cubs first. So let me give you guys a little introduction here for our good friend Greg. Greg is the co-founder of At Northside Bound. He's the lead writer for Real Cubs Insider. He's the co-host of the Growing Cubs podcast, and he is a nerd everywhere. You can follow him at Out of the Vines. Greg, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, fellas. I appreciate you having me. I'm excited to talk some draft stuff and some prospect stuff, always.
All right. Well, Fidds, I know you've done a lot of very heavy research. Fidds was very excited you were coming on, Greg. And usually we're a very loose show, we'll say this way. Fidds did his homework this time. Fidds is ready to go. He has been chomping at the bit to get into the Cubs draft. Me and NASCAR over there are the White Sox portion of the show. I do have some questions, though, about the Cubs draft, but I'm going to let Fidds lead it off because I know you've had something on your mind for a while.
Well, hey, look, we've got to be honest here. We were doing this because it's the only thing Cub fans have to be excited about right now. We're capitalizing on hope again, like the previous 108 years prior to 2016. So we got to get excited about teenagers for a little. Oh, that sounds so creepy, but we got to get really excited about the prospect. So the draft means a lot more when you're drafting in the top 8 picks, the top 7 picks in the Cubs case. So yeah. Greg, I'm really happy to have you on. I'm really super stoked. I know you put in a ton of time covering the Cubs in the farm system, and I really do appreciate you taking the time out to kind of share that kind of stuff with us as well here on the Pinwheels and Ivy. So
it feels like my time to shine a little bit. I mean, with how crappy the major league team is and all the sell-offs in back-to-back years, it feels like it's finally my time.
Right. It was a thing that, a couple of years ago, we thought, no way we would ever have to be that caught up in the Cubs farm system, where it was really the only entertainment in town, even if it's not in town, and it's somewhere in Myrtle Beach or South Bend or even Tennessee. Oh, Tennessee especially. The Cubs draft obviously came out. The Cubs came out firing. Shocked a little bit. There was, we talked about it here on the show a little bit when when the draft was coming. That I was very huge fan of Cam Collier. He was there. I was super stoked. I'm like, there's no way they're going to pass on him. Last year, I really had a huge meltdown when Colson Montgomery was available for the Cubs, and then they took Jordan Wicks, which then, of course, the White Sox took Colson Montgomery instead, and he's obviously been playing well. So for me, it was like 2 years in a row. Here we go, Cam Collier, don't do it, and Cade Horton. The Cubs dropped down and drafted a guy that was projected more than the mids to late, not necessarily in the top 10 and on most lists, but the Cubs, went out and got a big right-hander from Oklahoma who basically earned his draft spot in his draft, his draft capital, if you will, with the final 5 starts of his last year in college in the College World Series on the biggest stage. So, big righty. He has a 70-pitch fastball, but he has a huge sweeping slider. He's a converted third baseman, a guy that actually pitched. He's coming off Tommy John surgery about a year and a half ago, was playing third base for him a little bit, was doing some stuff out of the bullpen, slowly started ramping him up. And one of his teammates actually taught him a slider. And that slider obviously has been grading out as one of the best, if not the best slider of any pitcher coming out to the draft. He signed for $1.2 million under his slot. So, obviously we'll talk about that strategy in a second, because there obviously was a reason why the Cubs took someone like Horton early and then Jackson Ferris second. We'll get to Jackson Ferris in a second as well. But he really made his money with that. A lot of scouts felt he was very underappreciated. The injury risk was there. As a position player, a little bit more wear and tear, but it as a projectable, he's a big anchor of a rotation kind of guy. And he's a guy that can lean heavily on his breaking ball now because he's learned this slider that really is dirty. So I guess out of the blue, first off, thoughts on the draft as a whole, but then, take us into what you thought about the Horton pick, which was a little bit of a shocker for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, man, I think the draft as a whole, like going 16 pitchers versus only 4 position, was super interesting, especially in a draft, and going first and second round pitchers, especially in a draft that was talked about as being bat heavy. And then they zig when everybody else zags, and you go with all the pitchers. And at some, like, I respect that to a certain degree. I respect the front office and the draft team's ability to trust that pitching infrastructure they have in place. I know that we've written a couple of articles over at Northside Bound recently about the pitch lab. You always hear about this damn pitch lab, man, and you always hear about it. And it's one of those things where the pitch lab, all it is like every team has this pitch lab. Every team has the same technology and the same ability to take this pitch lab they have down in Arizona on the road with them to their different ballparks. But it's just the ability to coach these players up using that technology and have that knowledge. And obviously the front office is trusting that technique in this draft and drafting 16 pitchers. Go with Cade Horton is super interesting because, you heard it as soon as he was drafted. Like, it was the helium pick, right? It was just climbing up draft boards everywhere because of, you're right, that performance that he had starting in the Big 12 tournament and then going on through the College World Series because of that slider. And I think my favorite thing with the pick of Cade Horton is we've seen in the Cubs system that they work with pitchers to change and tweak their repertoires all the time. And we see it at the major league level with Keegan Thompson. He picked up that slider. In like a week later, after he picked up the slider, he was using it, and it's his best pitch, So for Cade Horton to show that ability and show that athleticism too, to change what he's doing, and that's a big thing too. Cade Horton was recruited a quarterback at Oklahoma too. Like, this is a really good athlete, and the Cubs have had a lot of success looking at guys like DJ Hers. We saw Cohen Moreno make his debut. Guys that are like freak athletes on the mound, and that goes a long way in the development of these guys. I really like a guy that can tweak what he's doing on the fly and change it up. And obviously Cade Horton with that slider, and that slider is not when it's at its best, it is not a normal slider where it's like really like going like glove side, like his glove side away, like that thing is dropping off the table down, like it's going straight. You know what Matt Swarmer was doing earlier this season out of his over the top arm slot? Basically, Cade Horton was doing that out of like a 3/4 arm slot. And it's going, the ball's just dropping straight down. It's like, how on earth is that happening? So he needs to work out some things to make sure that's more consistent, obviously, but it's not, man. Like it's coming in at like high 80s too.
Well, that's the thing. Like that sweep and what you're saying, when he comes from a 3/4 delivery, you're talking about a guy that's actually able to hide the baseball longer too, and it gets out of his hand quicker. So that's I mean, for me, is there a concern though that this is a new slider? He's coming off Tommy John surgery, and it's a pitch that they're going to say, wait, we need you to rely on this. This is what you get outs with, because, getting outs with his fastball, it seemed quite average with getting outs with his fastball compared to using that secondary stuff, and especially that sweeper. And is there a concern? Do you think is it a rightful concern? Is there a concern? Should there be a concern that a guy coming off of TJ, even though it's been a year and a half plus or whatever, that relying on this as a bread and butter is a little bit of a bigger gamble than maybe the Cubs might be projecting out there right now? Because it feels to me like it's a gamble with a guy that's going to, we don't know how many bullets and is that slider healthy? Like, is it really mechanically sound? We won't know till obviously you get to the Cubs. So, I mean, what do you think?
Dude, it's perfect that Cade Horton was the first round pick in a draft that is like low. Like he epitomizes this draft, where they went after a whole bunch of guys that were high ups, like high risk, high reward guys. And he is that to a T, where he's a big body, he's a big arm. Outside the Tommy John, like if you look at him pitch and you look at his body and you look at the way he throws the baseball, you'd think that he's a guy that's gonna like hold up in the rigors of a long season. You know what I mean? Obviously he's coming off that Tommy John not too long ago. But fans have been like shouting for a guy like Cade Horton. They want a high upside number one starter, and he could fizzle out. That could happen. He may not develop that changeup, and he may that fastball may not be. It's obviously 770 grade because of the velo. I don't think the pitch shape on that fastball is super great. He may fizzle out, but he also may end up being a number one starter for this team. And right now in the Cubs system, they don't have those like number one starters. I'm a huge fan of DJ Hurst. I'm a huge fan of even coming back in his way in. And we got Jordan Wilt, like all these guys. I just don't think they're number one starters, And so I think that the way that this is set up now, a lot of really intriguing arms, a really intriguing bats. This system afford to take a risk and go after these Cade bats and your Mule and all these guys throughout the system or throughout drafts. I really like strategy. It's different, weird, but
looks like we got a little bit of a lag, but yeah, like I actually agree. I mean, what Greg's talking about is the fact that the Cub fans need you want a number one. You need a dude, and he projects as a dude. He is big, strong. He's he's powerful. He's got some good movement. He also is a bulldog, and he showed up on the biggest stage. And so when you have a guy, to have a number one, and like he said, Jordan Wicks, last year's first pick, he might project as a 3 or a 4 possibly, but I don't think he projects as an ace. And you've got these guys in the system, but you don't have somebody that's going to stand up and come through the White Sox had, up until recently, at least he's not really done it as well, but Cease is becoming that. But Giolito was supposed to be something like that for the White Sox as well. It's supposed to be just the man on the bump. And they got potentially someone that can do that. So after the first pick, the Cubs went to the high school level, and they took a kid, left-handed pitcher, Jackson Ferris, out of IMG Academy. Big lefty, struck out 189 and 105 innings of work in 2 seasons at IMG, which is one of the better baseball factories in the country. Had a 1.33 ERA. But the thing I like best is high school coach. And this is a lefty that will probably sign for above slot, which is why Horton's signing for below slot. This is where that kind of averages are out. This is what makes the Horton pick to me palatable. Is really the Cubs got 2 mid to late first round picks if you take the mean of the average of the two. Ferris could be a dude as well for the Cubs. And I love this. His high school coach said he has a fire in the belly mentality. And I love hearing that kind of stuff about a guy on the bump, because you want a bulldog out there. You want someone that's going to go out there and take command of a ball game and be a game changer. Throws a fastball somewhere between 93, 95. He's got a curveball changeup that are considered above average. But, it's really the big question mark is, it's kind of funny. I've heard two different things. The scouts that I spoke to said that he relied on his fastball 90% of the time. Yet when you hear the Cubs director, the VP of scouting, Dan Kantrovich says that he completely contradicts that. He says he wasn't somebody just coming in pitching with 2 pitches for 2 innings. He was throwing complete games and showing off 4 pitches. And I'm like, it's so weird. And he says it went above beyond your typical 2-pitch high school pitcher. And the scouts that I spoke to literally called him a guy that basically relied on his fastball the whole time, because he throws hard and he's a lefty and he's a big guy. And so I found that pretty interesting that the Cubs spin on that was very different than what the scouts that I spoke to. But either way, this kid has the potential to be also another dude in the rotation that can develop, and he's got a good projectable body, and he's got, lefties are always, God, if you could tie your child's arm behind his back and make him a left-hander, as long as it's not torture, I think that it's a pretty good investment. So what did you think? Greg's right there. Greg, what did you think of what did you think of the Ferris pickup in conjunction with the Cade Horton, where it almost kind of averages together?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I think I saw Brett Taylor on Twitter compare what the Cubs did at 1 and 2 with like trading back in an NFL or NBA draft. And I really dig that comparison, where it's like the MLB draft is not just selecting the top, like ranking the top prospects in order. You know what I mean? And so by giving a lower slot bonus to Cade Horton at number 1, and then Jackson Ferris signing him above slot, basically you're trading back to get 2 picks in the like 1920. Like that's when those guys were ranked in the pre-draft rankings on MLB Pipeline. So you're getting like a couple mid to late round picks in the first round, as opposed to an early first round and a later pick at 47.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's that, and you get a guy that could be. And so the Cubs went the first 2 rounds. They went pitching, and this, kind of we joked about it, but the Cubs draft kind of with 16 pitchers. It felt like Tommy Boy when he was like when he snuck on the airplane to stewards, and they were like, "What's for dinner tonight? Chicken or chicken? What are we drafting next? Pitcher or pitcher? Let's go!" But one of the rare early picks was I'm not sure if I'm going to say his name right, but Chris Patiola from Temecula Valley High School in California. I was actually just in Temecula like 3 weeks ago. It's kind of funny that he popped up, but he was at 166th ranked prospect, but he was taken 86th overall. A lot of Nick Madrigal comps without the speed, though. He's a great contact guy. He was viewed as 5th or 6th round talent, but he runs a 7.1 plus 60 times. So he's a shortstop that probably projects either as a third baseman or a corner outfield. He was the 4th ranked shortstop in California, going to UCLA if he doesn't sign. But basically, he's Nick Madrigal with less speed and a bigger frame, which means he has more projectable, obviously, power. And this, again, seems like it was a value move to kind of save on more slot to pay the 4th round pick, which we'll get to in a second. But what'd you think of the Patiola? Someone told me that he had a power projection, but I only see contact projections from what I read.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised to hear the Nick Madrigal thing, because I think that he's got a lot more power in his frame and in his swing. I think that he's a contact guy first, although I've seen reports that the contact is not where it was originally scouted as. But I think the contact is there. But he's a third baseman, like you said. He's a third baseman. He was drafted as, he may be a shortstop now, but he's going to be a third baseman long term. I see a lot of like James Triantos in him to a certain degree. James Triantos, I think, is a much better prospect. I'm much higher on James Triantos, and I think that like where he was drafted is indicative of his prospect status. But I think that it's the same general vibe I'm looking at with Patiola as I am with James Triantos. So I think with this year's pick, though, you're more hopeful as a higher ceiling, maybe a lower floor than what you have with James Triantos. James Triantos, a very original, like a very weird pick in terms of a high school guy that has really a pretty high floor. Now, you don't see that very often. But I compare him more to a guy like James Triantos than Nick Madrigal, because I do see that power playing, especially given his bigger frame. Like, he's a 6'2", 6'3" guy. I think that he's going to fill out, play some third base, hit for some power.
Very good. Very cool. Cool. And then, so obviously I was a big fan of the Ferris. My favorite pick in this entire draft was the 4th round pick for the Cubs, which is Najir Mule. out of Passaic County Technical Institute in New Jersey. He was the number 1 ranked player in New Jersey, which isn't saying much. I mean, I think Anthony Soprano was ranked 4th, but he's a two-way player. He's an actual 6'3", 210, but he's a pitcher that can throw 100. He can touch up there, but he's usually a mid-90 with a solid slider and changeup. But he's also a shortstop, or was it a shortstop? But he DH'd this year. Most of his senior season. God, I love this. Is where I criticize the Oklahoma coaches for what they did with Cade Horton and had him play. This kid, they sat him as a DH. He basically just hit, swung it, and pitched all season. Hit 427, 8 homers, 22 extra base hits. He's a guy that could very well be, at least in the age of Shohei Ohtani, at least someone that's going to get at least a look as a possible two-way player. Now, this is what Dan Kantrovich said. He said he's a pretty dynamic talent. I don't think anybody would be averse to being open-minded on some kind of two-way role either. And this is why I love this pick, obviously. This was a pick I think that Paciolo was taken because now you can pay Mule a little bit more because he is a kid that you're trying to convince to not go to University of Miami, which is a very solid baseball school, at least, for a lot. That's a pretty good move there. So for you, what do you think about the Najee Mule? Do you think that there's a chance that this guy could be a two-way player? Or is it, he's got a great, he reminds me of a kid I coached named Trevor Jackson. He's tall, lanky, 6'3", and he's got his delivery looks so effortless too. So what were your thoughts on this one? Because this was such a great pick, I thought.
Dude, I love the, have you seen the interviews with him? He's just, the confidence is off the charts with him.
Great hair.
To the point where it's not really like cocky, it's just he knows he's good. I would love to see him keep working as a two-way guy. I think he'll be a pitcher long term. The swing needs quite a bit of work, but that's nothing new in drafting high school bats, But obviously, I think when you're a guy that touches 100 on the gun, and with the body that he has, I think he's a pitcher long term. He may get some at bats and stuff like that, but I don't think that he's a Shohei guy where he's going to be playing as much hitting. I don't think he's going to be getting 500 at bats and also logging 180 innings on the mound. I think he eventually gets converted, and probably not too long from now, into being a pitcher only. But dude, if that happens, it's not oh well, crap. We don't get this guy that's a two-way player. He's still chucking 100 on the gun. That's stupid. So I think the upside. I think that might be the highest upside pick of anybody in this entire draft, really.
I think it gives them options too. And I think that you're right. It's very difficult to come up, especially as a minor leaguer. That's a lot to ask of any baseball player to work on two very dynamically different crafts. As a hitter, your focus has to be specifically on getting better in the cage. On the bump, it's a whole different mindset. It's a whole different body wear and tear. And so it's very difficult to even attempt that. There's been a few, I think Brooks Kieschnick for the Cubs back in the 90s, I think tried it for a second. I want to say there's a kid from Houston that actually came out of Vegas. His name was Jordan Perez. They drafted him as a player, is what it actually said. Drafted as player because he was a center fielder that hit 500 and hit 15 taters, but he's also threw 100 on the bump. And so he ended up becoming a pitcher eventually over time. It was just too hard.
Regardless, you love the fallback, like you said, though. That fallback option. I can't pitch anymore. Let me fall back on the ability to have plus exit velo numbers from a high school kid. Okay, that sounds good to me.
Take it. We'll take it.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to go through all of it too much. Obviously we'd be here for all night if we went through each one, but I did want to kind of touch on the 5th round pick, Brandon Birdsell from Texas Tech. This is another one of my favorite picks in the draft of my 3 favorites. Actually, my 4 favorites. Birdsell was in there too. He's from Texas Tech, big righty, senior. Knew he was going to sign because he's done. Pretty good hard fastball, can touch 99 if he humps up. He's a big hoss at 6'2", 240. Slider, upper velocity changeup. He's a really, really well liked in the clubhouse. One of the scouts that I talked to, he's actually one of the regional scouts down in Texas. And so he got to see Texas Tech a ton over the last couple of years. So he's seen Birdsell a bunch. And his words said, he knows me enough. He's he said, I personally am going to love Birdsell with how he carries himself on the mound and in the clubhouse. That sells me right there, because that means he's going to be a guy that goes out of the bump and he's going to shove. He's going to shove it. He's going to, here it comes, and I'm going to throw it through you. And those are the kind of guys that I like. So it sounds like he's another, again, big, strong, high upside potential, hard throwing side. I think in the bottom 10 rounds, the last 10 rounds of the Cubs, I think all but 3 of those draft picks were 6'2" or taller, or 6'3" or taller.
A bunch of huge dudes, huge guys. Yeah. And with Birdsell too, if you would have told me before the draft that we'd be able to get a power conference pitcher of the year in the 5th round, I would have taken that in a heartbeat, you know? And I think you're right with the upside with Birdsell. His windup and his delivery is super interesting, where he has a little like hitch. Like he brings his after bringing his knee up, he brings it back to it's not like exactly like what Kershaw does, but the idea of what Kershaw does, where he brings his knee up and then back down, basically touching the ground. Birdsell does something pretty similar to that, and I think it throws batters off quite a bit. He did that so he could simplify his delivery coming off injuries. So again, the injuries are present with some of these guys, but it's that high risk, high reward. And Dan Kantrovitz and Carter Hawkins have been known and have been really, really good at drafting pitchers and developing them into major league players. And so I at this point, you just got to put your faith in them to a certain degree, you know.
And the 2 times that he's done this in the past, when he was with the Cardinals, Kantrovitz, it was Waka and Flaherty. I think part of what came through that. So that's not a bad little, if that you don't want a whole draft to net just one player, but that's a good start. So with that, there are a couple things, a couple of other players, the 6th round, the Cubs took Will Frisch out of Oregon State. He didn't even pitch in 2022, had Tommy John, but he was a collegiate All-American his freshman year. Nick Holt, this was a weird pick. In the 7th round, they took Nick Holt, a graduate senior out of GCU, Grand Canyon University, where I almost went. And he signed for $25,000 despite his slot being $237,500. So he signed for
it's like the Riley Martin pick from last year. Riley Martin was picked in the 6th round, I believe, last year at a Quincy University, which is a D2 school here in Illinois. And he signed for $1,000. So it's the slot system. The slot system, man, is a very interesting concept, and one that I would be totally fine with them getting rid of, to be completely honest with you.
Yep. So they took him. The fun pick in the 8th round, the Cubs threw a big old middle finger to Cardinal fans and drafted Mace Mcguire out of Capistrano Valley, another big right-hander, son of one Mark Mcguire, Big Mac. So former St. Louis Cardinal, big old FU, tall and lanky kid, throws low 90s, has a very good splitter from what I'm told, 6'3" frame. And we've seen what his dad's body can do with the right cocktails. So maybe he's committed to Oklahoma, which is his brother plays there already, but that was kind of interesting pick. And then we get to the 9th round. This one was an interesting pick, was the Nolan kid from Arkansas, Connor Nolan, right-hand pitcher. Started 19 games this year. Another kid that his postseason performances completely upped his draft status and drew him into a top 10 pick. He had some huge starts for Arkansas that got him into the College World Series in the first place in the postseason. So another really good player there. Then the McCullough kid from Wingate, a D2 school. He was 9-1, so he's a really big guy there. Held his own in the Cape. Big guy, low 90s fastball. The only one that really was weird to me in this one was the Brandon Noriega kid, because he had no affiliation whatsoever. And I'm firmly under the belief that it was his TikTok page that got him his first look. And then he got invited to play with the West Virginia Black Bears in the draft league this summer because of his TikTok, and then down the line. But that was a weird one. You got the kid from Ivy Tech, Matt Peters. You got
that's my favorite pick of the entire not favorite pick in terms. It's the most fun pick of the entire draft.
It was 103.
Is Matt Peters? Yeah, I mean, and his story is it's like something I've never heard before. I mean, he was cut from his high school team as a junior, didn't make the team, made the team as a senior, but he was 5. He'd grown 9 inches between now, since his senior year of high school and now. I think he said in an interview he was right around 80 miles an hour when he was at Bishop Dwenger in Fort Wayne, and basically didn't ever play his senior year of high school. Did not play baseball. He was on the team, but he never played. And then all of a sudden he hit a growth spurt. Now he's sitting there at 6'4", 6'3", whatever he is, pumping hitting 103 on the gun. And he's playing at Ivy Tech, and Ivy Tech is a school that is. They've never had a draft pick ever. Ivy Tech is it's a very weird situation because they have campuses all across the entire state of Indiana. But he was at the Fort Wayne campus, and when he was there, they've since this year they voted to not have the university voted to not have a baseball team starting next year. So this was their last year of having a baseball team. And he was obviously their only draft pick in school history. So Matt Peters is definitely my fun pick of the entire draft. And we'll see obviously he's going to be worked out of the bullpen. He's a bullpen guy for sure, but still crazy story.
I love that. That's all. That makes me happy. That makes me now. He just went up he just skyrocketed on my little list of please pan out.
Guys to root for, man. Yeah.
That Dennis Rodman growth spurt always works. Now you got 13th round Luis Rouhano, Sunshine State Elite Academy, another again righty. The 14th round one was pretty interesting actually. The White Sox took the actual Georgia catcher, but the Cubs took in the 14th round Shane Marshall, who was their backup catcher at Georgia, but throws 96 and started dabbling around with a gyro slider, and he threw a third of an inning in 2022 for his team. But the Cubs saw something that they liked, and they're happy to convert this guy into a pitcher. Now, I'll tell you this. I like this for another reason, because catchers are leaders. More than likely, this guy's going to be a leader wherever he goes because he's been a catcher his entire career. He's going to go in the clubhouse, and even if he's a pitcher, he's going to be able to – those type of guys, you just want around your players, even in your farm system, wherever he goes, whatever happens with him. He's like a Crash Davis kind of mindset where you have a guy that's just a veteran or a catcher that they just think differently. That's just what makes a catcher a catcher. They're different. So I like that one a lot.
And like elite fastball shape, apparently, for Shane Marshall. So may not have had a whole lot of innings on the mat. I think it was a total in college at Georgia. I think it was an inning and 2/3.
Yep.
And so it's another Jarek Suter situation that the Cubs had a couple of years back. But obviously, this have much more time to develop Shane Marshall into a good pitcher.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the Cubs took so many pitchers in this draft. The ball boy and the bat boy are going to have to start working and doing bullpens with that too. I mean,
even the catchers are pitchers. Yeah,
you get a pitcher, everyone gets a pitcher. It's crazy. In the 15th round, now this was one of my top 4 favorite picks, and it's probably because I'm a little biased. Hayden Mcgreery out of Colorado Mesa University, a big monster of a catcher. He actually was one of my players that I coached. Went to Colorado Mesa as well, so he was Frankie Fitzgerald's catcher. Frankie actually was super stoked, and Stokes stoked. And so when I asked him what was his thoughts, I said, what do you think? And he said, dude is a gamer. Best hitter I've ever seen, plus pretty athletic for the size. Balanced hitter that can put the ball 450. Great pickup. Now I'm going to say this, and this is something that Zoe will laugh at. Frankie, if it's the best hitter he's ever seen, Frankie multiple times in high school pitched against Bryson Stott. So if that's the best hitter he ever saw, that's a tell for me. So that's a big one. I know we don't have. Okay, go ahead, keep going. Yeah.
It's comical numbers. I mean, go look at Hayden Mcgreery's numers at Colorado Mesa, absurd, ridiculous. I mean, I'm trying to find the RBI total that he had during his time there. He played 163 games. I remember 163 games, basically the equivalent of a Major League season 162. Had 243 RBIs. Now, I'm not an RBI guy. I'm not out here shouting about guys getting oh, you're better if you have a whole bunch of RBIs. But if you put up 243 RBIs, you're up to something. You got something going there. That it's just absurd, crazy numbers. 75 home runs in those 163 games, just crazy number. He was a recruit. He was going to use his extra year of eligibility to go play at Kentucky. So obviously, big time recruit in the transfer portal. I think it was a pretty good pickup for the Cubs to sign him away from that Kentucky commitment.
Nice. And so lastly, we'll wrap it up here with this, and then we'll talk about some trade stuff too, and how this all is now going to affect the Cubs farm system and how the trades are going to happen. We got about 7 or 8 minutes. Andy Garriola, Old Dominion. You got another guy, Garrett Brown from Georgia. You got Brock Blatter from Billings Central, and then you finished with the shortest kid that the Cubs drafted, Keyshawn Collier out of Meridian, Mississippi. And so with the Cubs draft now, that's kind of that pushes next. The farm system now is going to have to reshuffle down, guys. I'm not sure how these guys will settle in as far as inside the Cubs farm system itself. But with all these moves and the Cubs picking up all these arms, now we hit this trade deadline, and we've obviously seen Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ's name out there, Robertson's name out there. Seeing the Cubs are obviously sellers one more time. What do you see coming up with the trade deadline for the Cubs? Do you see with everything the Cubs have in the farm system, which they've spent the last couple of seasons really kind of, or about a year and a half, really restocking, starting with the Yu Darvish sale? Where do you see all this filling in? Where do you see this year's trade deadline for the Cubs, and what do you think they're going to be gunning for as far as types of talent?
Yeah, I think that my favorite part about how they are rebuilding this farm system is it's completely different than what it was last time when they were building for that 2016 World Series. When they were building for the 2016 World Series, every single top prospect they had, every single prospect that came up to the major league level was coming up basically between that 2015, 2014 into 2014, all of 2015, part of 2016 with Wilson Contreras, and that is not building a team for sustainable success. That is not how the Los Angeles Dodgers build their organization. What they're doing right now is they're building a organization, a system that is set up that every year for the next few years, you're going to see a couple impact players come up to the big leagues. We've seen Chris Morel and Nelson Velasquez come up this year. We saw Justin Steele, Keegan Thompson make an impact last year. Next year, we're going to see Brennan Davis. We're going to see some of these pitchers, Jordan Wicks. We're going to see DJ Hers. And then you're going to get to the next wave of Pete Armstrong and Kevin Alcantara and James Triantos and guys like that. And the way they're building the system to be successful for the long term is huge. And so I only say that to bring it back to this trade deadline and saying that they can go after the best possible prospect package for guys like Wilson Contreras and David Robertson and Ian Happ and whoever. They don't need to target guys that are almost major league ready. They don't need to target teenagers like they did with Kevin Alcantara and Ismael Mania and those guys for Yu Darvish. They don't need to target a certain. I mean, it would be nice to have a little bit more catching depth in this system because the catching depth is a struggle. But as far as age and level of talent that you're acquiring at this trade deadline, I don't see any need one over the other. And that's a testament to the depth they've built in this system over the past, honestly, like you said, 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And that's exciting. Should fans temper their expectations for this trade deadline? I see a lot of people like, oh, we're going to get like 2 top 100 prospects for Wilson Contreras, even though he's a rental. Like, what kind of expectation for what level of talent? Because it is, you're right. The Cubs no longer have to target a specific specialty. They don't have to target arms. They don't have to target bats. Now they've got age and, they're age appropriate and bat appropriate and arm appropriate at this point where they can kind of just say, what do you got?
Dude, they're gonna not get any top 100 prospects for Wilson Contreras, and fans are gonna lose their freaking minds. And I mean, here's the thing: last deadline, they didn't get any top 100 prospects last deadline. Now they have Kevin Alcantara flirting with that. They got PCA. They got different guys that are. Caleb Killian has obviously made an impact. He's flirting with the back end of top 100 list. Just because you don't acquire a top 100 prospect does not mean that it was a bust. Please don't freak out, because the trust that these front offices are putting in their scouting departments. Look at a guy like Daniel Palencia, acquired in the Andrew Chafin deal last year, right? That was a pure scouting play. That was an entirely pure scouting play because he hadn't played much in full season ball or stateside at all. And he turned it out like everyone thought that was a Greg Dykman trade for Andrew Chafin. It was a Daniel Palencia trade. And we could see Daniel Palencia flirting with the back end of top 100 list here in the next year or so. So, like I said, just don't freak out. Don't freak out if we don't get top 100 guys. It doesn't mean they're garbage. I promise it doesn't mean they're garbage. It means that the Cubs see something in them for the future, and it would be nice to get a guy that's already top 100. Yeah, of course, I'd love to see the Cubs trade Wilson Contreras for the number 20 prospect in Major League Baseball. But if it doesn't happen, don't freak out, I guess, is the moral of the story.
And then they have the luxury now of not feeling like they're hogtied into some sort of strategy. They can just go after prospects that they project, and they can use the development.
Exactly.
Now I do one last thing. I know because we're getting close to that. We got about a couple more minutes, but real quick, got to ask: is there a package that you think the Cubs could offer that could meet what Washington is asking for? Of course, it's the monumental question with Juan Soto.
Yeah, I mean, probably. I don't know exactly what they'll end up wanting. I mean, I think that the rumor going around is that it's okay, the Cardinals have the ideal package because they can put together talent like prospect-y type talent, like young talent that's already in the majors, Nolan Gorman, Matt Liberatore, Dylan Carlson, guys like that, but also top prospects like Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn, guys like that. Now, the Cubs can put together a package like that. Should they? I don't know. I mean, I would love to get the arguably the best player in Major League Baseball on my team, but yeah, they could absolutely put together. It would be painful to see Brennan Davis and Keegan Thompson and Pete Armstrong and Kevin Alcantara all go over in the same deal. That would be rough. I would not appreciate seeing that. But yeah, I mean, just because of even a system that is not loaded up, there are still guys that every team could probably make a trade to some degree for Juan Soto. It would just be painful to take. But I mean, you put together Brennan Davis, Pete Armstrong, Kevin Alcantra, start with that, and then throw in a major league talent, Justin Steele or Keegan Thompson. That's a pretty good place to start if you're the Washington Nationals, you know.
Mm-hmm. And one last question before we let you go: who would be the prospect in the Cubs system that would hurt the worst to you if the Cubs trade a guy that you're like, oh man, I really would have loved to watch that guy just grow into fruition with the Cubs?
Yeah, Brennan Davis is my number one prospect in the system, but that will not be my answer to this question. Kevin Alcantra, if they would trade Kevin Alcantra, man, like he reminds me so much of Brennan Davis. Like there's so much to like about Kevin Alcantra. I think the upside is absurd with him. I mean, you got a guy in Kevin Alcantra who's already showing off like light tower power in Myrtle Beach, which is an incredibly difficult ballpark to hit home runs in. He hit a grand slam today that we didn't see it land. Like, it was absurd. And he's playing center field for the Pelicans right now. I'm seeing it's reminding me so much of Brennan Davis. A little bit of Eloy Jimenez for the White Sox guys in there. A little bit of Eloy Jimenez, but I see more Brennan Davis in him. We'll see if how much he continues to build out his frame, because he's still a lanky kid. He's got power and he's still like super lanky and got some speed. So a young Eloy Jimenez, not like the Eloy Jimenez now, but like a young Eloy Jimenez when he was like with the South Bend Cubs. That's what I'm seeing in Kevin Alcantra. I'd be devastated to see him go in a trade.
Well, Greg, before you take off, let the people know where they can find you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter on at Out of the Vines on Twitter, and then I'm co-founder of NorthsideBound.com. You can find me as a lead prospect writer over at Cubs Insider, and then co-host a podcast called the Growing Cubs Podcast. We're still going strong this year. That's my favorite thing that I do is host that Growing Cubs Podcast. So please go check it out if you're interested in prospects at all. We get super nerdy with it. Go deep into it. We talk about the Kevin Alcantras and PCAs of the world, but we're also talking about the guys that ultimately end up being like the Scott Efroses of the Major League team. So if you're into that sort of thing, go check out the Growing Cubs Podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. We really appreciate your time, and everybody go give him a follow there. I literally just did. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks,
we're going
guys.
to take a quick break here. We're going to do a sponsor, and then we're going to bring on Dan Victor. Thanks, Greg.
Appreciate it. Take care, guys.
Bye. All right, just a reminder, this show is brought to you by Sports Mockery, sportsmockery.com. Make sure you download that app, put on push notifications, so when the White Sox do make a deal or do decide not to suck, we will give you a push notification. It's Sports Mockery and sportsmockery.com. So that was the Cubs draft, very thoroughly covered, well put. And now we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to bring on Daniel Victor to the show. I'm going to wait till we bring him on here. Let me bring him on real quick
While we're in a little segue too, I do want to show you guys some quick video of the first round draft pick of the Chicago White Sox, actually running just showing off his lightning quick speed. So let's go ahead and
I knew this is where you were going with this. I feel
go ahead and showcase this for you guys real quick.
Here's our Herb. I love you, Herb.
And you're lucky.
Basically, Herb wanted to show everybody he was faster than Yasmani Grandal, because Yasmani Grandal is the slowest player from home to first in Major League Baseball right now.
I said that I can beat Yasmani Grandal in a race. We've measured out 90 feet. You can see down there, Vinny Stevens, our official timers. I got to beat 477 to get to that green garbage can down there. I don't know if you guys can see it. Sean Anderson's behind the camera.
Are you ready?
Do it.
Number 3.
This is the one you want. Those are, go Herb. Bam!
Ooh, we did it. I knew it was going to happen.
This is what happens.
Right?
I am
Was he fast?
You okay? No, I'm good. Okay.
So there we go. So let's watch that again.
If there wasn't a sniper in that tower, I think he had him beat.
Yeah, I think
He's right there in the balcony. You see him right there?
Yeah.
He doesn't get his legs taken out.
Oh, I mean, like
That was the one.
Yep, back and to the left. That's what called the raspberry. So I figured we'd just break that down for her. We love her, but
well, Dan, I don't think you'll ever get another intro like that from any other show. We're going to bring on to the show Dan Victor, baseball scout school alum, MILB player advocate for the White Sox Insider, baseball writer at Daily White Sox, and just a great Twitter follow for any White Sox fan out there. Dan, welcome to Pinwheels and Ivy, bud.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure to be here.
So Dan, we just went through the Cubs draft, and we were talking, and we couldn't think of a better person to have on to discuss some of the things that the White Sox did on draft day, but also, Dan, we're gonna get into it with you, bud, because we got a big trade deadline coming up, and no one knows this farm like you do. And I want to know who we can move, who we can't move, who you consider untouchable. You got Oscar Colas hitting his 5th home run in the last 4 games. That literally just happened. But first and foremost, Dan, why don't you tell the people about yourself, your background a little bit, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I was born and raised in the Chicago area, and I came down to the Carolinas to do a job for Brandenburg Demolition. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. You might have seen the trucks running around the city. We actually did the demolition at Wrigley Field when they did the renovations. Also cut the top 4 sections of the bowl off the new Comiskey Park. So we've done a lot of work in the city, but I ended up coming down to the Carolinas and fell in love with the area, the region, the White Sox minor league baseball, and decided to take another job down here and haven't looked back. And that's what I do in my spare time, cover the 3 different White Sox affiliates that are within the hour-and-a-half circle of my house.
That's awesome. I'll tell people right now, if you want to see videos or insight on White Sox, don't follow the teams, follow Dan.
Thanks,
Because
man.
you get the information like an hour before the team tweets it out. It's awesome. All right, Dan. Well, we'll start with the draft. First round, the White Sox go with Noah Schultz, big pitcher from the Chicagoland area. He throws from that 3-quarter slot. What are your early thoughts on him?
Well, I am not the draft guru. I collect my information from the guys that are the draft gurus. At Prospects 1500, there's a guy named Sean Carnahan. He's kind of our draft guru. And I've also talked to 4 different White Sox scouts and another scout from a different organization to assess their opinions of the draft. Now, mind you, talking to a White Sox scout about the White Sox draft afterwards is kind of like talking to, the Democratic presumptive presidential nominee after the convention. There's a lot of hopium in the air. Everybody is really stoked. But I can tell you what, they are absolutely over the moon about the potential of Noah Schultz.
Anything in particular?
Yes. They describe this kid as an absolute unicorn. He's 6'9", as you stated. He has incredible body control and the ability to maintain his balance, stay on line for being a big, skinny 6'9" kid. Usually when you think 6'9", 18 years old, you're thinking gangly, growing into himself and like a baby giraffe kind of thing. And he does not have those qualities from what I understand. They wanted me to make it abundantly clear that there was a gentleman by the name of Mark Sheehan that trained Noah and helped build what we have right now in him. Mark Sheehan was a Tom House disciple. Tom House, of course, was the guy who fixed, Randy Johnson. So yep. He has, the benefit of training with a Tom House disciple who fixed a guy and built a 6'10" ace. And the way they describe this kid is just unbelievable. I was told he has the potential to fully realize at his ceiling. They were talking about an 80 grade fastball, a 70 grade slider, a 60 grade changeup.
You're saying all the right things.
And mind you, this is coming from
right
a professional scout.
Right.
They were just pumped. They said the first start, they went out and saw him at the beginning of the season. He was 93 to 97. He ended up getting mono, and it derailed him. And when he came back, he wasn't throwing as hard. They said if he doesn't get mono, he's probably going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. And what they really like, they have a great future, or a great past with this kid, a great history. Justin Wexler and J.J. Lally were his coaches at the area code games. So they've been seeing this kid and establishing ties and a relationship with him for the last 2 years. So they probably know him as good as anybody in all of professional baseball.
Mm-hmm. And you always know a team. You always know a team is Really excited about a pick when they get him signed right away. It looks like he's signed for 2.8, so just over slot for his position. So I love seeing that. I love seeing them getting him ready to go. I have another prospect, another draft pick that I specifically want to talk about. Mitch, you got another one that you want to bring up?
Go ahead with yours first.
Okay, so he's a 16th rounder. I remember this. I love watching college baseball, and I remember this dude when they drafted him. I was like, I remember this guy's name. I looked him up right away. He is that guy. He was a pitcher. His name's Tristan Stivers. And in the College World Series, he closed the game against Texas, and he threw the horns down to the Texas dugout and went absolutely nuts. This guy looks like an absolute psychopath. He's got a blonde mustache and a blonde mullet. Have you heard anything about him, Dan?
I have. As a matter of fact, I have talked to him since the draft.
I love it.
One of the things I talked to him about, I had to comment on, was that sweet stash and that flow that he's got, because that is awesome. But Tristan Stivers, what's cool about him, his signing scout was Mr. Wilt. Mr. Wilt was his signing scout. His first name is escaping me. I'm sure I have it in my notes. But he also had a history with John Kazanis, who was, I call him the Southpaw Whisperer. John has been a scout since the late 80s. You know, he's been in baseball as a scout for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And he was the guy who was responsible for signing Mark Burley. You know, we might have heard of Mark Burley. And he got Burley in, the 36th round. He also drafted Avery Weems, who, Avery Weems is a left-hander that John had strong feelings about, even though he had an ERA of over 7 in college. But he drafted him, and he ended up being, a component that we flipped to Texas to get, with Dane Dunning to get Lance Lynn. So I think of John as a guru when it comes to left-handed pitchers. And
it's quite the pedigree.
But I'm sorry, we were talking about Stivers.
Yep.
I have some notes on him as well. But yeah, he is. He gets a little bit pumped for sure.
We like that in our closers on the south side, though.
Yes. Tyler Wilt was his scout. He was a New Mexico JUCO kid. He didn't have great success. He had high walks. He had trouble repeating in the zone, but he made changes at Texas State that were great for him. John said a lot of credit goes to him. He said it's much easier to fold the tent and give up than it is to work your ass off to get better. He said Tyler Wilt really wanted this kid throughout the draft. He was pounding the table that we had to find a way to select him, and they ended up getting him in the 16th round. I was told he has no fear. He's going to go as hard as he can to beat you, and he's going to find a way to beat you most of the time. Very wired, very intense, as you said, and he was the top closer in the NCAA. But he's not your typical power closer. He does have arm strength, but the breaking pitches make his pitch mix very successful. Anytime a pitcher can command several pitches, the hitter is always at a disadvantage when you can mix it up because you can't sit on the one pitch. But those were my notes on Stivers.
Fair enough. I'm going to go a little bit off the draft, Dan. I'm sorry. I appreciate the draft. I know it's a very vital part, but where this White Sox team is right now, I need to talk about the farm system because we got a really important date coming up here. And I know you're very plugged in down there, and there's the obvious names, the Cespedes, Fidds' boy Montgomery, Colas, all these guys. As the trade deadline approaches, who's untouchable to you?
Well, remember that in addition to, tweeting and writing about the White Sox minor leaguers, I also end up knowing them. We're a booster host family for the Kannapolis Cannonballers, so we get to know all these kids on like a personal level, and you're like asking me to trade away my children. And
oh, that's a tough one.
I would have a tough time parting with anybody, but obviously there are trade pieces, and baseball is a business, but I would certainly not want to part with Colson Montgomery. Yeah, and I saw some rumblings today about Jorge Vera kicking the tires on trading Jorge Vera, and I also wouldn't want to part with him.
I
Yeah,
have a question about
his name's come up a lot.
So, speaking of Kannapolis, this is a guy that I was really excited about when they drafted last year. Jared Kelly, they had him in the second round. A lot of people projected him as first-round pick. He had his struggles a bit last year. There were some reports about like some conditioning issues. I'm just curious about how he's developing so far this year. And if you think he's going to turn it around at all this season.
He's having a lot better season this year. He started the year with a pitch count, and they weren't letting him get very deep, but he's getting they gradually increased his workload. He has arm strength, and he throws very hard. He can bring it up to – he's consistent, putting up a lot of 96s. I've seen him touch 98. He also has a good changeup and a developing slider. He not missing a whole lot of bats this year. If you look at the K rate, it's not exceptional. But he is definitely making strides. I think the big thing for him is when he's offline, he tends to miss east and west, and it kills him. That's when he gets a high pitch count, and that's when he starts walking guys. But if he stays online, he seems to be in the zone, and I think he's improving dramatically. I think he definitely looks like a major leaguer this year, and last year he looked like, is this kid going to make it? Is he going to bust? But he looks good.
Now, there was some early rumblings about Oscar Colas and his early adaptation to playing ball stateside. Some people were questioning his, levels of dedication. It seems like since his call up to Double-A, I don't know if he's just healthy or where he's at, but he's hitting the cover off the ball. And I don't know. What have you seen? I know I trust the guy who sees it with his own eyes. So what have you seen with Oscar Colas, and what can you tell him about him?
The funny thing is, every time I've gone to see him, he has not played. I've never gotten a live look at him. I've talked to some of his teammates about him, and they say that he's very good and that he's definitely a big leaguer. But I've never personally seen him on the field. I've only watched him on MLB TV like everyone else.
What about Mr. Sosa down there?
I love Lenin Sosa. He is.
Everybody does.
He's terrific. When he came to Kannapolis, statistically he didn't have the best year hitting, but he's really sound defensively. And it's not because he has incredible range. He's not like overly quick, but he's so fundamentally sound that he uses the minimal amount of effort to make the plays. He's in the right spot. He has great footwork. His arm strength isn't going to set the world. He's not going to do like the kid in the futures game and throw 100 miles an hour across the diamond. But his fundamentals are so good that he can stick at shortstop despite the limitations that he has athletically or twitchy. But the bat has really come around this year. Hitting with power to all fields. He looks great.
Yeah, Mitch, you got a prospect or anybody you're looking at more information about?
Wes Kapp is another guy that I think is kind of intriguing. I don't know if you had any like info on him, but I think he's a guy that kind of flies under the radar for like White Sox prospects. I think sneakily be kind of a stud at the corner infield.
Wes that's a John Cazanas signee. He was an Arizona high school kid. John had a long history with watching him, loves the family, says, he was brought up very well, good makeup, left-handed hitter and third baseman. John gave him Michael Brantley comps with the bat. So he's going to end up developing some power. The swing looks a little bit long. He's probably going to have to shorten it up a little bit and get to the ball, be a little bit more direct and quicker. But his results have been mixed this year. I've seen him put some charges into some baseballs, and then I've seen him, look puzzled. And that's the problem when you draft high school kids. These kids are used to being the big man on campus. They're used to dominating every step of the way. And then you put them in, against a bunch of SEC pitchers that are throwing 95, 96, and they've never seen this kind of velo with regularity or this kind of sharp breaking stuff. And it's like, holy cow, they seem overmatched. It's easy for them to get buried. And, he's he's growing through that process right now. Defensively, I've seen him look like an all-star one day and look like a high school kid the next day. Booting an easy ball or losing a fly ball in the sun and having it land 5 feet behind him, and then next thing you know, he's going to his backhand side, on the past the foul line and turning on a dime and making a throw across the diamond, and you're like, wow. So I know it's there, just a matter of refining it all.
All right, Dan, this is going to be a tough one now. Who's the prospect people should be talking about that they aren't? I know you're on Twitter. I know you see all this and everything, but I also know you're watching these games. You're visiting all these fields and everything. Who's flying under the radar right now that we should be paying attention to?
I'm a big fan of the catcher that they have at High A. His name's Adam Hackenberg. Now,
okay,
this kid has genetics like you would not believe. His brother was Christian Hackenberg, the Penn State quarterback that was drafted by the Jets. His other brother plays professional soccer, and a third brother was an unbelievably good freshman collegiate pitcher. His dad was a college football player. His mother was a college volleyball player. His uncle played football at West Point. The kid has athletic genetics that are through the roof. Unbelievably sound defensive catcher. He played college ball at Clemson. He shows big time power when he gets into it, but statistics right now are nothing that set the world on fire. But I think that he could be a big league catcher for 10 years one day.
Oh, I'm gonna hand up. I've never heard of him, so you got me there, Dan. And I mean, right now, you said catcher, and my gut reflex was because the White Sox are carrying 3 right now. But hey, if he's really, I mean, it sounds like he hit the genetic lottery. So I'd be happy to have a kid like that up eventually. I mean, Yaz isn't getting any younger, but
another guy that they don't talk about nearly enough is Carlos Perez. Carlos Perez is another catcher. He's reached AAA. He's with the Knights now. He's really starting to show power, and he's never had any issue whatsoever with swing and miss, and he's always been a very good defensive catcher and a smart player. He also has some genetics. His brother played in the big leagues for the Rockies, and he's currently still floating around in AAA somewhere. But I think his brother might have led the organization in home runs with 30-plus in the Rockies a couple years back. So, but Carlos Perez is another interesting player.
What do you think about that Tanner McDougal guy? Sorry.
Well, I have to see him pitch. I know that's your guy, but I haven't seen him pitch. He had his TJ surgery right after the draft. He pitched a couple innings in rookie ball and then got shut down before he ever made it to Kannapolis. I'm really looking forward to seeing him, though. I talked to Coach Witt down there by you guys about him, and he had me pumped, and I was ready to run out and buy season tickets.
Yeah, he'll be there in a sec. He's starting to ramp it up now too. He's starting to get a little bit. You can tell he's getting there because he gets a little bit more feisty with his texts too. They start having a little bit more. He starts making that mental transition over because he's a great kid too. So I mean, obviously he's a pretty decent ways away. But what are your thoughts on the calf kid? Like I mean, I was just not necessarily like full on, but like how quickly is he a 2025 guy or is he a 2024 guy? Because I've had one guy tell me that he really does believe that Cath is going to be ready sooner than later, and that's a good left-handed bat.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up on me.
Oh, Cath, Wes, is he closer than 2025?
No.
Okay. He's just looking big.
No, he's a good boy. I guess going back to the draft, Dan, and I know we kind of skipped over it. Was there a pick that really stood out to you?
I really love the top 3 picks. Peyton Paulette. I was, Baseball America had him in January. They had him ranked as the number 2 pitcher in the draft class, and the Sox got him in the second round. they're big on him. He's right now. He's out with TJ surgery. He's in his recovery from TJ, which obviously knocked him down draft boards. But this kid, undersized righty, he's got that Roy Oswalt-like build. Hopefully he can be Roy Oswalt. That would be ideal.
That would work.
But electric fastball, good breaking ball with the metrics to match. They say his curveball is ultra high spin. He shows a feel for the change, but his scout told me that further refinement of that pitch will be one of the keys to unlocking his ceiling. Because usually even the most ballyhooed starters that are, high draft picks, if they come out with 2 pitches to the big leagues, they can usually survive and thrive for a while, but usually you need a third pitch to maintain, all-star level success, or you become a bullpen guy. And that doesn't mean he can't be a great bullpen guy either. But he was a force for Arkansas since he arrived on campus, came into the season, one of the top college arms. That injury caused, him to tumble down the boards. But they say his fastball has good carry up in the zone. I've watched some videos. It looks explosive. And his tight spin breaker, that curve, is a filthy pitch. He won't pitch until spring training next year, ideally, because that's about where he's at in his recovery from TJ. And he's supposedly very fiery on the mound as well. They said he's a fiery character, and they called him a Ferrari. So
I like that.
I did notice it pretty interesting, the signing bonus slot with the obviously everyone's playing their shenanigans with like how to allocate what, underpay a guy here, pay over here. Are the White Sox gearing up to pay Peyton Pallett and Jonathan Cannon? Because I'm looking at this and I'm looking at their top 11. You got one guy, Michael Turner signs for $35K under 100. His slot was 160. You got the Camaletti kid signs for $20K and his 171. 150K from McLaughlin, but he was supposed to be 205. 200K. You keep going to the list. The Sox have been under slot almost on every pick. Does that tell? Do you think that means that they're going to pay Pallett and Cannon? Because you're not really saving any money here. You got to use it.
Yes. Well, remember the Sox came into the draft with the third lowest bonus pool, and they also had an organizational need for pitching depth.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the minor league pitching depth for the White Sox currently are the high-profile, high school guys like McDougal, Kelly, Thompson, Dahlquist. Those guys are all at the lower levels. So they needed some polished college arms that they can, move quickly to Double-A and then start thinking about them as, back-end starters, relievers, swingmen, and able to get on the, on the plane from Charlotte to Chicago, because it's pretty rough if somebody gets hurt right now. There's not a whole lot going on.
Joe Kelly.
We got Davis Martin. He had some really good starts.
He did.
And we got Jimmy Lambert, who I think is a kind of a tweener between a long bullpen guy and a starter. He's solid as well. But
they put him in some high leverage situations too. Like he makes a couple 8th inning appearances. He's actually done a really good job this year.
He's an underrated guy. His stuff is good. But they didn't, he didn't get a lot of pub coming through the ranks.
I know a couple of years ago, Dallas Keuchel said at spring training, like, this guy's probably my favorite pitcher in the organization right now. He's got some of the best stuff. Now, obviously, Sox fans have their opinions about Dallas Keuchel, but when they first signed him, that kind of jumped off the page. And I always kept a closer eye on Jimmy because of that.
Somebody block his text messages, please. Somebody block his text messages.
But for a while, Charlotte was functioning with basically one starter. When Davis Martin got called up and Jimmy Lambert was called up, they had one starter going and every game was a bullpen game. And, they were hiring or signing guys that were, kind of retreads and trying to get them to hang in. It was pretty rough, and they need guys that can fly through the ranks. And I'm sorry, I'm diluting your question, Kev, but yes, because they went out and got almost all college, seniors and fourth-year juniors and whatnot. Those guys didn't have a lot of leverage, and that is absolutely, I'm sure, to prepare to sign their 1, 2, and 3 guys. And Cannon's also another one. I was told that they had grade 1. They had grade 1. They had him as a first rounder.
Like to see that.
So they basically told me, that they thought that they got 3 first rounders with their first 3 picks.
And that's a. I mean, if you have your plan, I mean, I've said it on here. I think there's a million ways to skin a cat. There's a million ways to draft. There's a million philosophies. There's a million ways to restock your farm system. There's a million ways to have a plan of attack. If you go into a draft and everything falls the way that you pre-planned it, I mean, is there much to be upset about? I mean, the fans might not get it, but you do have that. Like, you're like, this is exactly, it fell. The Connect 4 fell exactly how we wanted it, and we got what we wanted. And if that's being honest and earnest, and they're not just giving you like optics and kind of side talk, does that give you a lot of optimism when you hear them say something like that? That sounds like obviously like they hit, like they feel like they hit, and that's a confidence coming out of. Sometimes they're like, yeah, we're okay with it. This sounds like they were pretty pumped,
big time, and these guys. I saw something on Twitter today. Somebody was making remarks about how they drafted all these college seniors, and that I guess when Mike Shirley was talking about guys and talking about their motor and their drive, and that they were good clubhouse guys, people were kind of poo-pooing on that notion and saying negatives about getting a bunch of old guys that can play Double-A. That's simply not the way it's going to be. If these guys can move quickly, if they can dominate in the lowest levels and move quickly, they can be at a level where they are age appropriate, according to when judged against the par age for the level. Last year they took a 6th-year senior that was 24 years old from Butler University, Theo Denlinger, relief pitcher. He came in, he dominated rookie ball, he dominated low A. They moved him to high A. Now he's at Double-A, and he's 25 years old, and he's the appropriate age for the level. If they can get that kind of performance, they're going to be all right. They're not going to have a bunch of 26-year-olds floating around in high A. That'll be good.
And then
real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you say that Noah Schultz mono?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that means 2 of the top 3 picks for the Chicago White Sox have dealt with mono over the last year and a half. Just as a small little weird tidbit of, because apparently Jonathan Cannon was a potential first rounder in 2021, but missed the first 3 weeks of the season with mono.
All I'm hearing is White Sox draft dudes that get with chicks.
Hey, that means that they don't have to worry about getting mono anymore. I mean, that's great.
So my question, Dan, just one more on the draft. It was a little bit of a surprising pick to me. I don't know. I guess I could see the need down the line, but Jordan Sprinkle, highly touted as a great defensive shortstop. He's got some wheels. There's a lot of work to do with the stick. What have you heard about him? I'm just curious about him.
I was told he might be the best defensive infielder in the entire draft.
Well, watching this team lately, Lord have mercy, do they need someone who can play defense in that infield? So,
yeah, I heard he might be the best defensive infielder in the entire draft. They said he has 80 grade speed. He had a bad year, but they believe in the tools. And if you look at the year prior, I think he went from 340 with a 400 OBP down to 280 with a 370, 380 OBP. So, I mean, who cares about batting average these days anymore anyway?
Well, you can do a lot with 80 grade speed. I mean, I don't care if he goes up there and slap bunts 3 out of 4 times, as long as he gets his ass on base, and that'd be sick. I'm going to say right now, Dan, I don't know about you, Mitch, but Dan, you just got me hyped about this draft class. I am pumped about this draft class after talking to you, because they sound phenomenal. And
there was another guy I wanted to mention to you, if it's all right.
Absolutely.
There's a kid that they got from Michigan. I believe he played at Western Michigan, named Mario Camaletti. I was told from a scout in another organization, not the White Sox, which always gives me even more hope when a guy from another organization says, he said, Camaletti was my gut feel guy. He said he had arguably the best hitting approach in college baseball last year.
Heard that before.
An igniter, and he really wanted to draft him. He's an undersized guy, second baseman. But then I was talking to J.J. Lally and Justin Wexler, who was the scout that signed him. And he said that this kid had more 10 to 12 pitch at bats than you've ever seen in your life. He said he said every count would get to 3-2, and he would just wear the pitcher down until he made a mistake, and then he would hammer him for it. And if you watch the White Sox religiously, that hitting approach is not something that you always
we need that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what's he doing on Saturdays? You feel like playing some Major League Baseball? Because put him at second right now. I don't. Is there any other guys in the farm or in the draft, Dan? Before we let you go here, anybody else that you want our fan base to know about? I really appreciate you being so well prepared and gracious with your time. Is there anyone else that we should be talking about?
One more. Shane Murphy was a college guy that John Cazanes drafted out of Arizona. He said that a scout in another organization that he speaks to frequently had given this kid he gave him a David Peterson comp. David Peterson, was a Mets first rounder that is doing quite well in the big leagues. Shane Murphy is the White Sox 14th rounder. He was another guy. He was coming back from TJ surgery this year. He only pitched 9 or 10 innings. So they didn't get to see a whole lot of him. But because of the history they had in watching him before, that those 9 or 10 innings was enough to sell the Sox on, getting this kid signed to a contract. But the thing that impressed me about what I was told, now he's a lefty. Right now he doesn't throw extremely hard, but he is coming back from Tommy John. And he had, 3 weeks worth of work. But he had a history with them. His brother, Patrick, played he was a third-round pick by the Blue Jays in 2013. He's still pitching in the big leagues for the Nationals. And John told me the interesting thing about Murphy is that guys that come back from TJ, rehab, tend to have trouble commanding their pitches. He said he had great balance, control of all 3 pitches, clean delivery, online, effortless. And he said this kid just absolutely paints the corners with a tiny paintbrush and has great sequencing. So, that sounds like the savvy kind of lefty that can be a back end of the rotation kind of guy.
That's awesome. Well, Dan, let the people know where they can find you. And again, I'm not just blowing smoke because you're here, Dan. I really appreciate what you do on Twitter. It helps me feel like I can stay in touch with what's really going down on the farm. But let the people know where they can follow you, Dan.
You can follow me here on Twitter, SlyDan070. I also am the White Sox team correspondent for Prospects 1500. That's a website that covers all 30 organizations and their prospects. And I do features and minor league coverage for White Sox Daily as well.
Mm-hmm. Great videos, great content. Dan, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Hopefully we can touch base down the line and talk about, a little bit happier times when I don't want to strangle everyone on the White Sox. So.
Thanks, man. And if you, I think you got that 90 feet. I think you're going to get it next time. I think you beat Grandal.
Oh, that was, I don't know. After Herb's display today, I don't think I'm volunteering. I'd probably stop halfway and light a Parliament up. But we appreciate it, Dan. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Yeah, honestly, if we did a foot race, 100%, it has to be on grass. It has to be on grass.
I'm not running 90 feet.
If your upper torso at our age gets in front of those legs, you're screwed. You're going down. You're going
literally
down.
On my tombstone. It's going to say like loving husband, father, brother, whatever. And then it's going to say he didn't run. I don't run, dude. I don't run. That's why I play golf. You don't run. I don't run.
Dingers only.
Two awesome guests, man. I mean, you guys I've never knew more about the Cubs draft in my entire life than what just happened there. It was funny. Me and Mitch didn't say a fucking word because I was literally like, this is actually really interesting. And then Dan's a great guy, a lot of personality, and I'll say it again now that he's not here. You got to follow the guy on Twitter. If you're a big White Sox fan, you got to follow the guy on Twitter. Always first with the videos, always first with the analysis. He's not kidding when he says these guys are like family to him. He'll put up videos of them like sitting down eating together, and he'll be like, "Hey man, real quick, what do you think about that?" It's like he's in the shit, for lack of a better term.
And scouts, you know, like he said, he talked to Coach Witt. Like scouts respect him. He has, you know, I
can see why. He's a great guy.
Big boy conversations. He has baseball conversations. Like he's, you know, when you have a conversation with people that don't have a lot of time. So if you're gonna take some of their time and talk to them about like a player or about what they see, or like, you know, because again, the biggest thing is learning from others. And I think that's what Dan does so well, is that he's learned from these people that he trusts, and he speaks to the right people. And so he can take in that information and that data, and he's able to then, again, fill everybody else in, you know, almost like a funnel. He funnels all that information in. And so the fact that he speaks to so many scouts, and again, he said he's a host home, or so he has players that stay with him. He's giving to the game too.
He's
like
in the mix.
Yeah. So that's just
in the mix.
It's an absolutely great follow. Absolutely great follow.
I know we're already at the hour and 20-minute mark, but I'm talking about the White Sox. And sir, you will listen to every word I have to say because I have the microphone. But I'm hot. I'm hot right now because usually out of all of my years of doing this and just being a White Sox fan in general, when the White Sox lose, it's not like when the Bears lose and you have to wait another week for them to play. You can usually just let it roll off the back. You know, this loss on Wednesday to Colorado, I'm fucking pissed. That was such a bullshit loss, and it was such a perfect, like, snapshot of why this season has been so incredibly fucking frustrating. I'm going to swear a lot too, so if you got kids, just get them out of the room. Why the season has been so incredibly frustrating, it's because stupid base running, getting picked off at third, just dumb shit, errors. I'm just talking about day one shit, like shit that you teach your fourth grader his first day of Little League. Like basic stuff that these guys that get paid millions of dollars should know how to do backwards and in their sleep. And they messed that up. Lucas Giolito, bad first inning. Story of the White Sox fucking season. I can't find it. I've been looking for it. I didn't really give it my full effort, but I need to find out the White Sox ERA in the first inning. Because I feel like the White Sox in the first, those NFRI bets that everybody loves to do, the White Sox got to be like the worst team to do that for, because they just give up a run or two every first inning, which is ridiculous because then you're playing from behind the whole goddamn time, and that's no way to go through a season. And so that's driving me up the goddamn wall. And then they finally battle back, and I'm like, all right, we're putting together some hits. The White Sox are actually starting to rally a little bit, showing some sign of life. You know, maybe the stones dropped. And then the bullpen usage from TL, it just blows my mind. Jimmy Lambert, who we talked about just a couple of minutes ago, he comes in for the second day in a row, gets out of a huge situation. You know, Hendricks isn't on the table because he's dealing with altitude issues and he threw 30 pitches the day before. Let Jimmy go back out there. He threw one pitch. Well, it's hindsight, Mitch.
I mean, you're paying the other two guys. Like, I get it, but like, but you made a lot of good points. It's dumb stuff, and at this point, you're almost like numb to it because they've been doing it all year. But you're paying Joe Kelly all this money. You brought him in for these high leverage situations in the 8th inning when you got a lead. That's what you're gonna ride with. Kendall Graven, the same thing. Guy that's been there before. Like, I get it, but as far as like the bullpen usage there, I actually think he used the bullpen the way like I would have made. Like, I had no.
And I guess
any of the moves he made.
I guess to his, and I'm just going to be talking fiery, so I'm going to go and backtrack a lot here. But in his defense, I mean, I'm sure he wasn't like, oh, I can't wait. Joe Kelly's definitely going to get hurt. You know what I mean? Like, he got hurt again, which what a horrible signing that's turning out to be. I mean, it's just, and then Graveman he couldn't find the zone, dude.
Well, today was evidence of why trade deadline, biggest need, some more bullpen help, especially because one of your best guys, Aaron Bummer, is like they don't know if or when he's going to be back, which is really concerning. So
injuries suck. I'm not trying to downplay injuries. Injuries suck, and I'm sure they didn't plan on all these guys getting hurt. But the only position player that they gave money to this offseason was fucking Larry Garcia. All the rest of the money went to this bullpen, and now we're sitting there at the trade deadline, and the top need is bullpen.
Yep.
Like that pisses me off too, because
And, everyone was saying we need left-handed power. We need left-handed power. Guess what?
Left-hand-
They're lacking.
yeah.
Left-handed power. It's like,
Left-handed
well, I mean,
power.
we all saw it, and would have been nice to have a Kyle Schwarber on the roster right about now. But
for all these reasons that I just mentioned, that's why this is like the perfect snapshot of why the season is just why we're sitting at 500 on July 28th, because it's just bullshit. Just stupid bullshit. And it's so frustrating because they have the talent. Jose Abreu's having a phenomenal year. Tim Anderson, all-star starter. Yoel Moncada in the last whatever month I guess he's healthy now. He's hitting well with runners in scoring position. He's an above average defender. And then you get Luis Robert hurt. Aloy's still not 100%. Apparently he can't play 2 days in a row still. You get Grandal back, and since he's been back from injury, he's been good, but you're carrying 3 fucking catchers right now. It usually doesn't piss me off this much, but today's loss was just like a complete microcosm of this season, and it just drove me nuts. The pitcher giving up the runs in the first inning, the having to play from behind, then the bad base running, then the errors, then the bullpen usage, and then just to blow the save. It was like your 2022 White Sox, everyone.
And what's funny about it, especially now that like trade deadline season's heating up. I wrote an article today on like potential acquisitions for like the trade deadline. And all the needs that the White Sox have right now are needs that they had during the offseason that everyone's like, they should address right field, second base, like bullpen help. And in the middle of the season, sure enough, all still needs we have because they were not properly addressed during the offseason.
And to that exact point, as our good friend of the show, Mr. Hand says, Rick Hahn needs to be fired. And I like Rick. As a guy, I think Rick's a good dude. But enough's enough, man.
The seat at the table ain't cutting it anymore.
Well, that and you go into the season with these very clear-cut specific needs, and here we are, a couple days away from the trade deadline, and you have the same clear-cut specific needs.
Right.
And it's just, that is a failure as a general manager. You failed. And the White Sox are in this weird place right now because they're in this shit division where they're only, 4 games back still because Minnesota lost today.
Yeah.
And they still have the team built to go for it. We don't know what the hell's going on with Luis Robert, and like they can't sell right now. They got a piss poor farm system. It's not that bad. I mean, Dan literally just made me feel way better about it, and I knew he'd be a half full guy because that's his, but still, like, he made me feel really good about it. And so they can't really do that. But now let's talk about the trade deadline though, because there's a lot of things flying around. Right before we went on, a report from a Dodgers beat writer said the Giants are starting to take calls about Jock and Rodon. Bring Carlos home. Bring Carlos home. Carlos's arm still scares me. I know he's been really good this year, but we all remember what he did in the first half, second half last year. But Jock would be sick on this White Sox team.
Don't jinx it.
I'm just saying, but like, I'll take either one of them, to be honest with you, at this point. But that MLB executive burner Twitter account, he's been hit or miss. I'm not going to say he's batting 1,000, but I'm also not going to say he's shit. He has gotten a couple things.
He's Sebi Zavala.
Fair. Somebody asked him, like, what are some moves that you've heard that would shock everybody? And he listed like 6 or 7 different things, and the last thing he wrote was Giolito being dealt. And I was like, whew. But that got the old wheels turning here in the factory. Contract year, not having a great year. I'd hate to see it. I love Lucas Giolito, and what he's done for this team, you can never take away. But Lucas is struggling. We've seen flashes of it for a couple games. He had a really shitty first inning against the Rockies, but he did battle back like Kopech's been doing all season, like Lance Lynn's been doing all season, where they have these shitty first innings and then they have to battle back through the next 4 or 5 innings, but they get it done. But again, playing from behind is no way to go through a season and expect to be a winning team.
It's exhausting, actually.
Yeah. And they showed the Whites, and if you guys haven't caught on by now, I'm very much like a body language, like what's going on with this team. After this loss to Colorado, that team looked like they just got fucking kicked square in the balls. Like that was a deflating, that one hurt. And then Yeah, and that was the other thing that Mr. Ham brings up. They didn't exactly have a great offseason with Giolito when they were fighting over that $50,000 or whatever. He's probably still salty. I don't think he's that kind of guy where he'd be petty like that, but
I'm sure it didn't help matters.
no, it doesn't. And it's definitely lining up to be where like it kind of makes sense. I really don't want it to happen, but you got to kind of put your head and your heart separately, and it makes sense. Some of the other names that I've seen brought up with the White Sox, obviously they have the big prospects, Colas, who's been tearing the cover off the fucking ball since he went to Double-A. Cespedes, who I really haven't heard much about lately. Sosa, but I also saw something that the White Sox put in offering for Ian Happ, and it started with Vera. I mean, this is the type of move that needs
Good
to
as
be made.
Vera is, I mean, it's kind of what you're. This is your window, so might as well send it.
I'm not so sure that Tim Anderson isn't resigning here, but if he doesn't, that's where Montgomery comes into play. But
That meat lovers pizza in the trunk.
yeah, I don't think they'll trade Tim Anderson. But
No way, no shot.
It's interesting, man, because so you talk about like who should they be going after, or what names are in return, and all this stuff like that. I mean, a huge W for the White Sox would be Luis Castillo.
Oh yeah.
If they can pull that one out, I think they're going to make I'm not going to say the seat at the table phrase. I think they're going to make a run at it. I just think that other teams have got stronger packages that they can put together for something like that.
Yeah. I know the Reds were like hesitant about trading him to begin with, but I think at this point they decided to just because they're dumping everyone.
Yeah,
they
need to rip that Band-Aid off.
Rick Hahn is kind of in a position where he doesn't have much to. I mean, he has a kind of a built-in excuse to why he couldn't make as many moves, unless he takes on salary issued type players in return for a lesser return, from him. So it's kind of weird. The White Sox would have to just take on more salary, I think, but I still think he can get some stuff done with some.
It's going to be interesting, and I've said this again. I've said this before, and now I feel even more strongly about it. This is Rick Hahn's career, this trade deadline.
Yep.
I feel like this is the most important trade deadline of his career, which can either keep him here or he can walk. But like, this team was built to win this year. He needs to get crafty. He's running on fumes with that system and what he can trade, but that's why a guy like Giolito or whatever is probably going to need to be part of some kind of deal. And from the Reds, I like Luis Castillo, and I've liked Drury.
Drury is growing on me. The more I've been looking into it, that'd be a good pick.
But I mean, the no doubt in my head that they're going to make a deal for is they need a lefty bullpen arm.
Matt Moore.
Matt Moore's the big one. Matt Moore's the name right now, but this is
Chafin
where
would be pretty good too. I would take an Andrew Chafin. But the interdivision thing would be a tough sell. Not that it couldn't happen, but I think that'd probably be the best lefty on the market right behind. Or I think actually I would take him ahead of Moore.
I mean, Detroit's fucking terrible.
You want the sheriff.
I want him, but I don't think Detroit wants to keep him in the division. They don't want to. Detroit's not lining up to help the White Sox out right now.
Isn't it only a 1-year deal? So like, what does it matter if they traded him to the White Sox for half a season? He's not going to be with the White Sox at the end of the season, more than likely.
Yeah.
Actually, a guy I also really think would help, left-handed power guy, would be Josh Bell. I think, and now mind you, I know they got all these first basemen on the roster, but you put Vaughn, Sheets would probably have to go, or he'd be the odd man out if they did add him. But you have him at DH, you get the left-handed power solve. You probably have to put Vaughn in right, and then obviously you got like Angle for defensive replacement later in the game. But for a couple-month rental, I don't think you'd have to give up that much. I know the Nationals trying to sell everyone. I think that would be a very nice pickup because you get the left-handed power thing solved, and he hits for average too. He's hitting over 300 this year. I think that'd be a nice addition to the middle of the lineup.
Yeah, and I mean,
by the way, I suck. It was a 2-year deal for Chafin, so never mind. I'm an idiot. Yeah, I'm seeing you up or down there as well.
But he has a player option after this year.
Oh, okay.
And he will probably opt out of it most likely. So it'd be a for Chafin.
It's gonna be. I mean, the deadline's on Tuesday. They got to get to work. I mean, it's just I got to see something. The team, the on the field team. I mean, right now, White Sox come home for 3 against the Athletics and then 3 against the Royals. I mean, I know the Athletics just swept the Astros.
No, that's at home. That's one you got to.
Yeah.
We all know they won't because White Sox. Like, there's no more like easy wins on the schedule anymore with this team where you can like chop it up. We learned that lesson the hard way with Baltimore, but like
Baltimore's good.
You should win. You should win those 3.
Since since the middle of June, Baltimore would have been in first place in the AL East. Baltimore's a very good team right now, but.
Well, we heading into that series, we all thought, oh, they're going to take 3 or 4. This will be a good one to like right the ship.
They got to do something. And I see you guys in the comments telling me not to get my hopes up and all this other shit, but like, I'm going to just because, the Yankees just made a deal for Andrew Benintendi.
Oh,
really?
Well, that kicks off the trade deadline.
They clearly have no faith that Toronto's going to make the playoffs.
Jeff Passan, the New York Yankees are finalizing a deal to acquire outfielder Andrew Benintendi from Kansas City. Sources tell ESPN. 3 minor leaguers will be headed back to the Royals.
Well, that takes them out of the Juan Soto sweepstakes, I would think.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the right move for them. The only thing that's going to get weird is if they run into Toronto in the playoffs. But
that's what I was just thinking. They clearly have no faith that Toronto's going to make the playoffs.
That just loads up the White Sox beating up on the Royals a little bit more in the second half schedule.
It does help because they're about to play the Royals 7 times. I am going to get my hopes up. I'm going to get hope that they do something. I don't expect anything different. But this is just how I am as a fan. Like, I think it's the easy way out with most things in life to just automatically assume the worst and be pessimistic about all this stuff. But like, I don't know. Maybe the Yankees are going to get rid of Joey Gallo now. Actually, they probably will.
Probably.
Yeah.
I would think
probably cheap too. I don't know. It's just that's just me as how I am. I'm not going to get like super mad when they don't do anything. It's just I'd be more surprised. But Stanton is hurt too. Where does Ian Happ go now? One of the other 14 teams that he's been linked to. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it is what it is.
Greg said the same thing. He's going to net better value than Wilson Contreras because he's got a year and a half left on his deal. He's inexpensive relatively for someone producing from both sides of the plate.
And he's more versatile.
Yep, exactly. There will be a market for him.
Yeah,
for
100%.
Sure. I don't know. I would trade. Honestly, as a Sox fan, I would not want to add Ian Happ for a huge. Like, I would take, but like I would not give him a ton for him. The strikeout numbers are really high, and he's really inconsistent. He's at a high right now, or just value wise. But I wouldn't.
He has been pretty consistent over the last 2 seasons now. Like, he was pretty inconsistent early on, but the last 2 years he's been very. I mean, he's had a normal, down here and there, but for the most part, the last 2 seasons, I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. I've been one of his bigger critics, and it's not dropping. I think he might be there now. I don't know. I mean, he really projected to be there when he was younger, and he was sent down. I mean, he got the Schwarber treatment. Schwarber got same thing. Schwarber got sent down, brought up, struggled, and I mean, obviously the Cubs gave up on Schwarber for a different reason, but Happ kind of is in that little area right now where this might be him. I mean, it's entirely possible this is him. He's been much, much, much better since last year. His approach is quick.
Speaking of Schwarber, I was reading an interesting article from Philadelphia. One of the things I've been doing lately in the last couple of years is I follow a lot more of the local blogs for the different teams, but he suggested that the Phillies might just be like taking a look around and saying, maybe we move a couple pieces, not like a complete, maybe like just kind of like, it's not going to happen this year. We got some guys that are on his way out. Maybe we make some moves. And Zach, the name that keeps coming up is Zach Wheeler, which I think that's got too big of a price tag for the White Sox, but that would be interesting. Go get.
They do need to make something. They need to make a move, though. Whatever move they have to make something. They have to make a move, even if it's a symbolic move, to show that Because if he does we're going to stand pat at the trade deadline, I don't think that tells your clubhouse that you really want to do anything to help him out.
I don't think that's going to be. Rick Hahn, I think he realizes like he can read the room. He's not a complete idiot. Now, some of his moves, some fans may argue that he is, but like they will make a move. I am very don't know how big or small it's going to be. They will make at least one move for exactly what you said. Just like, hey, look, we're trying. Like we're trying to make. So we'll see. It'll probably be a bullpen arm, and nothing that moves the needle. But you never know. We'll see.
Yep. I think they make at least 3 trades. That's the number I have in my head. 3 trades.
I think for the Cubs, I think you get Wilson, Happ, and Robertson. I don't think anybody else goes. I think that'll be about it for the Cubs. I would be shocked if anybody. I mean, maybe they'll deal Stroman, but I doubt it. But here's the thing that makes me crack up. And we've joked about it on here. All this Patrick Wisdom's the fine replacement. Blah 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 blah. Why is nobody calling about Patrick Wisdom? He's got a cheap contract. He's got under team control for like 3 or 4 more years. He hits taters, right? His stats look great. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody's calling about Patrick Wisdom, and that's very telling to me about what the rest of the league really actually thinks about somebody that shows up once every 4 or 5 days. Yep. It tells me everything, and so that's where I feel a little more vindicated there because they tried to sell us Schwindel and Wisdom as a Cub fan as a nice replacement for Brizzo, and that is just the gaslighting. And so with the White Sox, you got guys that are going out there and that have underperformed still up to this point, whereas I think for Cubs fans, it's the opposite direction. So I think with you guys, I've seen a lot of there's so much pessimism. I think this White Sox team is, it's shit. Stuff like today sucks. Like that shit can't happen, especially in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But my God, like this stretch right here, it is it. Like they really, and like wasted a chance today with the Twins losing too. But they've really got a good road to really take advantage of here, and they've got to do it now. It's time to now shit or get off the pot.
Yep, and I get it, man. I understand the pessimism, and I understand, why some people even give me shit. But this is just how I fan, and it's just I like to think that they get it done. Am I going to be overly surprised when they don't? No, not at all, not in the least bit. It's just more. I would, that's just kind of where I stand with it. But hopefully, this Andrew Benintendi move kind of people are saying that the Juan Soto shit is handcuffing a lot of teams, but the White Sox really need to just realize they have no shot at Juan Soto. Obviously, they have a shot, but as our first guest and I said, like, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze there. So,
the simple fact they'd have to pay him $500 million if you do, because if you're gonna send all this process over, you've got to resign him, and it's not like we all know the Sox aren't paying that much money.
No, so yeah, it's about it. You guys got anything else though? We're already at the hour 45 mark.
Nah.
Well, I just want to say thank you again to both of our guests tonight. You guys were both amazing. Make sure you guys go show them love on their social medias. And then, if and when the White Sox or the Cubs make any kind of trades, we will try to go live from the @Pinwheels account on Twitter. But if not, mostly our personal stuff, and we'll retweet it. But we'll definitely be jumping in that conversation. I personally will be joining Josh Nelson on his Twitter space on trade deadline day on Tuesday. He's got a bunch of people coming just to talk about what's happening. And then before we go, we need a graphic for this. Like, we need like a sound effect or a graphic. But it's been fucking getting real in the field and in the world of NASCAR. Like, so much so that my completely no NASCAR following Twitter account has been getting Twitter news or NASCAR news put in there. So here is NASCAR Minute with our very own NASCAR Mitch.
We might almost need 2 minutes for all the stuff that's about to happen. All right, so fair. The race this week was in Pocono, the tricky triangle. NASCAR fans,
triangle.
It's always left-hand turns. It's an oval. So Pocono said, you know what? We're going to take out one of those turns. We're only going to have 3, and the track is shaped like a triangle instead of an oval.
Let's go.
There you go. Little backstory to this race too. Before this race, I guess, was some of the beef that was going on. So back in the race in St. Louis, Denny Hamlin was driving. He's kind of in the lead. He was slowing up this guy, Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain had enough of it. He sent him into the wall, damaged his car. Denny Hamlin was pissed. So he's like, I'm going to get him back for this. Flash forward to Atlanta. Everyone's wondering, when's he going to get him back? When's he going to get him back? Atlanta, Ross Chastain wrecked him again. So now Denny Hamlin, he's even more pissed. He's in the media. He's like, I'm going to get this guy. He's like fuming. So everyone's wondering, when's the payback going to be? So now, flash forward to Pocono. Big strategy race, too. Kind of like a lot of cars were spinning out on turn 3. Tires kept blowing out. Who knows? Ross Chastain had a really good pit cycle. I don't know what the hell that was.
He's flowing. You're fucking up his flow. Keep going, Mitch.
He finds himself in the front. There's a restart. Who is he next to in the front of the pack?
Ooh.
Denny Hamlin.
God damn it.
Denny Hamlin, they're racing. Ross Chastain, he's a very aggressive driver. None of the other people in the garage really like him because he wrecks everyone. It's like, hey, if you're in front of me, I'm bumping you out of the way to get the win. All these other drivers are like, we don't like that. So Denny, everyone's wondering when he's going to get his revenge. They're running into the corner. Denny drives him up into the corner. Now, Ross Chastain, he has got 2 moves because he's running out of track. It's either, hey, I'm going to lift and I get out of the way because Denny's not giving much of a choice, or he does what Ross Chastain does. I'm Ross Chastain. I'm barreling in there. I don't lift for anyone. So he barrels in there. He ran out of track. He wrecks. So everyone's like, Denny got him back. And then Denny goes to wins the race. Everyone's booing him because no one really likes Denny Hamlin. Screw that guy. But, he's like, hey, you know what? Did what I did. I wrecked my arch nemesis. Let's go. He's having a good day. His daughter was there driving around with him. It was fun. It was, yeah. I felt so bad for her. Next thing you know, 2 hours after the race, there's an alert. Yeah, actually, Denny Hamlin didn't win in post-race inspection. He failed. So now the second place car, he wins. Kyle Busch, they check his car post-race inspection. He failed too. So then Chase Elliott, of course, backdoors his way to another win.
Hold on, reverse. Are the cars on like roids? Like what are the cars?
I'll get to that in a second. I'll get to the reason. So both these cars too, they pass pre-race inspection. Yeah. So they pass pre-race inspection. So how it works, they like bring them through a scanner. They got all these lasers that go through it, make sure the measurements and everything are right. So they all pass pre-race inspection. Post-race inspection is a little different. They have to like take the wrap off the car because they don't do paint anymore. They have like a little like literal wrap that goes over it.
Yes, I've learned about this in Cars 3.
Yeah. So they take the wrap off for post-race inspection with the winners. There was a piece of clear tape on the right front fuchsia of the car that I guess made it faster, but you can't see it with the wrap over it. And that piece of tape cost them $35,000 and the win. Both the Joe Gibbs cars had it. And, notice conveniently, they couldn't inspect the Chase Elliott car because that thing was in the hauler already and it was gone. So they just gave him the one without inspecting it. Fishy, if you ask me. But
shady as fuck, dude.
And that's the first time since 2005 when Cal Norton Jr. Came in third and then ended up with the win over Ricky Bobby. In NASCAR history. But in actual, 60 years that's been since that's happened. Or since 1960. I think was the last time the winner got disqualified. So it was a big deal. Denny had some jokes on Twitter. If I would look up Denny Hamlin's Twitter and go through there, he had some funny stuff on there.
I like to just take a moment right now and say, Mitch, that was the most electrifying 3 minutes you've put on this show since you've joined. I absolutely fucking love that. Like, I love that. I'm gonna tell Aldo to clip it. I want that out in the world. You were prepared.
NASCAR minute.
You told me I was edge of my seat that whole story. That was a beautiful told story, my man.
And the Game of Thrones style twist with the disqualification. You think it's over with disqualification,
but you're asking questions too. You're like, he's going into the corner. He's got 1 or 2 options. And I was just like, what is he gonna do? But yeah, that was that by far the best NASCAR minute.
Thank you. I'm going to the race in Indy, so maybe we'll get some more good content out of that for next week. Yeah, hopefully the Sox win too, but
well, yeah,
all else spells will have some interesting NASCAR.
I think you got a better chance at the NASCAR, but yeah, we got to come up with like a graphic or something.
Yeah, I think I'll see if I can make something this week while I'm digging around.
This is that was phenomenal. Like I am blown away, Mitch. You brought it tonight. That was phenomenal. That was NASCAR Minute with NASCAR Mitch. And this is a baseball podcast.
Hell yeah. So, wait, that thing to victory lane, brother.
Yeah. I mean, that was, I'm going to go have a smoke after that. That was beautiful. Well, for NASCAR Mitch, the good Reverend Cade Fidds, I'm your boy Southside Zoe. This is this week's Pinwheels and Ivy. And again, go show our guests some love on social media. It's not always easy being a guest on someone's show, believe me. And so they came prepared. They had their notes. I loved every minute of it. So, and also make sure you're following us at Pinwheels Ivy Pod. Again, as trades happen, one of us will be going live to talk about what's going on with the trade, our immediate thoughts. And appreciate y'all. Be good to each other. And we'll see you guys next week.